Good evening, friends and subscribers. Thanks for joining us tonight. Tonight, we have not one guest. We have many, as Venoge is hosting company tonight. I'm really looking forward to this fun-packed evening, and I hope you are. So we're going to turn it over to Mrs. Weaver.
Thank you, Mrs. LaPena. What a pleasure again to be here, and we welcome again everybody to our Venoge Fireside stream. There is no fireside. It's been 85 degrees today. We are not by the fire. We are in our barn broadcasting, and we do have indeed a large group of assorted 18th century people. Not our 19th century folks, but we've stepped back a little bit. But to introduce you to them, I'm going to run a little bit of an intro video, and then we'll begin. Though the Venoge cottage was built in 1828, today we travel back to the 18th century of 1781. The Fort Jefferson and Clarksville Living History Unit organized an event here. Formed in 2020, they belong to a larger organization, the Northwest Territory Alliance. Their purpose is to recreate the culture and arts of the American Revolution from 1775 to 1783. The Fort Jefferson Group is specific in its interests. Unlike other purely military units of the Northwest Territory Alliance, they include more of the civilian side of the story. Fort Jefferson was built at the confluence of the Mississippi and the Ohio rivers. Activities and impressions of the members are limited to the time the actual fort and settlement were in existence. Putting on an event is a lot of work. But after chores are done, it's time for a little recreation 18th century style. A tense game of checkers, anyone? Or maybe a game of chance is more to your liking. Spinning, weaving, fancy work, a bit of music, a tailor plying his trade. Those domestic arts and trades are important to the citizen side of the overall story. The members demonstrate these with skill and experience. The highlight of any gathering is the preparation of the evening meal. Cooked on the open hearth, it is a treat worth waiting for. Several unit members are joining us for the live stream this evening. They are anxious to answer your questions. Let's join them and experience this important time in our nation's past. Their passion is something which needs to be shared. Please welcome our first guest, Dana Gagnon. And indeed, we have Dana Gagnon here in her 18th century finery.
Thank you so much for having me and for having all of us. Your site is such a wonderful host for our group. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. You perk up the place. You take us back a little bit.
We do. We go back further than your usual time.
Yes.
And usually you hear Revolutionary War and we're coming up, we're seeing a lot of it right now. Yes. Because it was just Patriots Day weekend and we hear the 250th anniversary is coming up and the cycle's coming, and you hear about Lexington and Concord, and you hear about Yorktown, but what you don't often hear about, at least I didn't when I was in school, is what's happening in the Northwest Territory. Things are happening out here, and that's what our group represents.
And you're going to tell us about it, aren't you?
Yes, not all right now. You'll have to wait for all of that. Before we do any more, though, I see you have a glass, and I have a glass. Can I put something in my glass?
Oh, please do.
Okay. Because if you're watching, I feel like you should also find a glass, because that is another thing that we do in our group when we spend time together, is find a glass.
And we want to thank our friends the Victorian Bar Room, Amy Liebert and Brian Cushing, for this wonderful recipe for whiskey punch.
Yeah, that is one of the best things about, there's a lot of great things about doing living history, but living history is delicious. And I don't know if everyone knows that. We can talk about that more later. But yes, I am wearing finery, And I'm excited about it, so I'll tell you about it because I usually come in more of a working outfit, and you will see in our group we have all kinds of different outfits because shock of all shocks, people did not wear one thing all the time. And I have on a chintz gown, which is nicer. In the 18th century, chintz fabrics are your nicer fabrics. They're coming from India, or they're coming from England to look like they come from India, because you gotta love a knockoff. And I have on a chintz, it's open robe, so you can see my petticoat underneath, and that's silk, you can see a little of that. And because I have a stomacher, I have robings. Most, but not necessarily all, but most gowns that had stomachers had the robings, so very 1770s revoir.
Tell a little bit about the reverse of your gown, madam.
Oh, let's look at the reverse. Oh, okay, well, you won't see all of this.
Nice shape.
There's a shape, and okay, I trust you guys watching this. It's okay, I'm going to talk about this, which is part of the shape. There's a little extra poof, because a false rump is a thing. That's a thing in the 18th century.
Not the real rump, the false rump.
Now, there's a little extra, which goodness knows I didn't think I needed, but this is a part of the design. But, as it has been pointed out to me, it enhances this idea that you need to make in the movies, they make you not breathe so that you can make your waist not. No. You can do other things to enhance your waist, like add a little hips. And look, it makes my waist small. Just humor me, it makes my waist small, okay? So
I don't doubt you.
You're such a kind host.
Yes.
So one of the things I want to do is talk about the history. Our group is named Fort Jefferson, and there's things going on out here in the Northwest Territory, and Kevin Hickel in our group has a lot of information about that, so if you don't mind, I'd like to invite him here to join us.
I would like to hear what Mr. Hickel says.
Okay, come on over.
I will scooch down here.
Good evening,
I'm going to
ladies.
take some of these out. These are some of the sources that you have that we take a look at.
Yes,
So
the Ken Carson.
it makes us look really smart if we put books on the table, right?
But not open them.
Shh, don't help them. Let's talk about, you said Ken Carson's. When we are talking about Fort Jefferson, there's books by Ken Carson's, and it's only fair if we mention him because he has done a lot of research on that, and that's where we get a lot of information about this specific fort, and it's why of all the forts that one could represent, there's data for us. We have stuff to look up,
Yes.
and we appreciate that.
One of the most documented units out there as far as a reenactment group can be.
How come?
Well, that was to the meticulous nature of George Rogers Clark. He kept all of his receipts, and he submitted them to the state of Virginia because he actually paid for all of his expenses at the time out here in the Northwest Territory, which I don't know if people understand what the Northwest Territory is,
No.
but it basically covers the states of Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, and Wisconsin. So it's a big chunk of the country, the Midwest.
Did Mr. Clark expect to get repaid?
He did. That's why he kept meticulous records.
And did he get repaid?
No, he submitted all the documents to Virginia, the state of Virginia, and they promptly lost them.
That never happens in government. I don't know what you
No.
mean.
Well, luckily they found them again in the early 1900s. And
found
so
that.
we have access to them now.
So is that where he gets some of the information that
Yes.
he does that? Okay.
Yes,
That's
that
fantastic.
and Filson Club and,
Okay.
and University of Chicago and his own research. I mean, there's documents floating around that weren't submitted.
Okay.
So
Oh.
there's I found documents on eBay that pertain to George Rogers Clark originals.
That's fantastic. So what is happening big picture? We know what's happening in the beginning of the Revolutionary War in the East Coast, and we know Stamp Act taxes. What's happening out here? Why do people out here care if we fight the British or what's happening?
Yeah, who cares?
Well, Patrick Henry in the state of Virginia felt that this territory was theirs. And it was contentious because Pennsylvania also thought it was theirs.
Okay.
And so Patrick Henry at one point gave, George Rogers Clark came up with the plan and presented it to Patrick Henry. to secure the Northwest Territory for the state of Virginia. Patrick Henry felt that he could not get that through the legislature of Virginia, so Patrick Henry gave him secret orders to do that. The public orders were to secure the settlements in the Kentucky settlements.
So he found a workaround.
He found a workaround. Patrick Henry also had some support in the legislature that said that if you were successful with the securing the Northwest Territory, we'll get your men all land grants, which they were, and they ended up getting those.
Okay.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yes.
You always wonder at the beginning of a story if the thing that we're supposed to get happens at the end of the story.
Well, the people are still alive.
And this makes sense because of the because for George Rogers Clark that didn't work.
No,
out.
he did not get repaid.
No. But did he work to get all of his men paid as much as he possibly could?
Yeah, most of his men got their land grants
Okay.
in the southern part of Indiana around Louisville.
So ironically, it's their commander that didn't.
Yeah, he also got a land grant,
Okay.
which is now the state park in Indiana. It's called George Rogers Clark State Park, where his
Right.
reconstructed cabin is overlooking
Right.
the Falls of the Ohio.
Okay. And that it makes sense that Pennsylvania and Virginia both claim them because if we look at the colonial charters, right? They didn't know what was west. They just drew a line.
Right.
They said, yeah, your
They had
state
a ruler.
ends. Yeah, they were state ends. And what they didn't notice is when they drew the line, they were going to intersect at one point, right?
Yeah.
We're like, so we both have that land. Where we're talking about Fort Jefferson and the whole idea of, I know the British really wanted to keep control of the Ohio River and the Mississippi. And so, therefore, the Americans said, we also want control of the Ohio River and Mississippi. So where did they decide to put Fort Jefferson?
At the confluence of the Ohio and the Mississippi, so
Okay.
they could control both.
Okay.
This happened after Clark had secured the Northwest Territory by retaking Vincennes from Henry Hamilton, who was the lieutenant governor of Detroit and in charge of this entire area for the British. They ended up capturing him and sending him back to Williamsburg in chains.
Okay. And some of us who do this, we go to an event at Vincennes and we get
Correct.
to learn a lot about history too. So if you're watching this and you're thinking, oh, we're talking about one part of it, there are lots of chances to get to learn. And we're there, so you could go meet us there, which you should definitely do. So we have a fort near the confluence. It's in Kentucky. It's in what we now call Kentucky. It was.
No,
I guess
it was in
Kentucky was
Illinois.
just it was in Illinois. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Is it big? Is it a big
No,
fort?
it's 100 by 100, the stockade itself.
Okay.
Now, Clark also recruited some of the Kentucky settlers to come along with them with promises of land that he granted them if they came along. And there was a platted town that was laid out just outside the fort.
What
And
did they name that?
They named it, it was called Clarkstown, Clarksville,
Okay.
or
Yeah, I
Iron
wonder how
Banks.
George
Iron Banks is
Rogers thought
another
of that.
interesting.
Oh, Iron Banks is different than George Rogers.
Yeah,
thought.
because
Okay.
they named it that because there was yellow oozing coming out of the ground
Oh.
there. So
Oh,
they
really?
thought it was
Definitely where I
iron.
want to start planting crops.
Oozing. Yes.
Oh, great. That's a
Yeah.
good word. I love that.
It was near the the
Okay.
bottoms. So
Okay.
Okay.
So what year did they put it there?
it was 1780. April
Okay.
of 1780 is when they first started the fort, and by June of 1780 they had the entire stockade built
Okay.
around there and the blockhouses. There was one integral blockhouse with the stockade, and then a separate blockhouse that was named Keller's Blockhouse.
Okay.
It was standalone.
Same Kellers as has Kellers Company?
Correct.
Same one.
Correct. All of the Illinois regiment companies, Kellers, Worthingtons, McCarty's, Brashears, all of those Illinois regiment companies that fought with Clark throughout the campaign, it ended up at Fort Jefferson at one point or another because he set that up
Okay.
as his center of government.
Okay.
He had his quartermaster corps there, the artillery, the cavalry, Rogers Company with the cavalry. And
So they had it all.
They had everything.
So that means that you, interpreting that fort, can do anything.
Yeah, we can do the artillery, we can do the cavalry, we can do the foot soldier. We even have records of a militia company set up with the townspeople, farmers,
Okay.
millwrights, woodworkers, iron
Artificers?
workers, artificers, and the quartermaster corps was there as well.
You just
So
wanted to
about
say
any-
Yes, I did.
I knew it. I knew it.
About anything that you would want to interpret, you can do in our unit.
Which is great because a lot of units, and our unit is a member of the NWTA. Oh, look, there's a flyer right here about the NWTA. How did that happen? But the NWTA is an organization of different groups that represent specific units. Each group represents a specific military unit. But we kind of get to do more things because Fort Jefferson has more opportunities for interpretation.
Right. We had the civilian interpretation, which I felt was a good fit for me because after doing foot soldier for almost 30 years, I was getting a little too, what was the term you used earlier, aged?
Me? I would never.
She said mature, but
Mature,
I questioned
okay.
it.
Oh, all right.
Because I'm very polite.
I was getting too mature to
Yes.
be out in the field marching around quite a bit,
Very
so I needed
mature.
a little break, and I wasn't ready to step away from reenacting. So
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one thing I really like is that there's a lot of room for different
Yeah.
interpretations. And you listed a lot of the military ones, and you listed then there's also farmer, and there's the civilian militia. There's a member of our group has really looked into period tailoring techniques.
yes.
We have some people who do leather working. We have someone who is right now not here this weekend because he got the chance to do a traditional coopering class. So, I mean, just anything that needs to be happening in a settlement or in a fort.
And don't forget all the seamstresses we have.
Well, and that, yes.
And that's what we had here
We are
today.
gonna
We had a
cover that.
lot of that going on, and that's what you all were talking about and what doing to the public.
One of the fun things in this book, which is, it's literally a list of record entries. It's not much a narrative kind of thing. But you can see entry after entry of a shirt was sewn by a woman and she was compensated X number of
And we know her
yards and
name,
things like that. Yeah.
and whether she had a family or
Yeah.
had any kids. I mean, there were children there as
Yeah.
well.
So excellent record keeping.
Right, and there is, one of my favorite things was finding in the book that there was some really, really odd fabric that was used by the quartermaster's department.
Odd in what way?
Just flashy, very, very
Oh.
flashy, that isn't probably going to be accepted in the current reenactment world. So
Oh, that's
we're going to
fun.
surprise some people.
Are we going to look for it? Absolutely. Would we do that?
No.
Hey, it's in here. We can
You
do
can
it.
document it, you can do it.
There's an entry for their St. Patrick's Day celebration.
Yes, I was reading that today. I mean, they asked for spirituous liquors.
There's an entry the next day for their St.
Where they-
Patrick's wife, St. Bridget's celebration, which is what, I don't know, that's what they celebrated in the 18th century. There was
I think we should
celebrating.
revive that.
I'm okay with that. I think that's maybe something that we can add to our schedule. I know a place we can do that.
One of the records on that was it said that he needed the tafia for St. Patrick.
I mean, how do you
Just for St. Patrick.
how do you
know?
not approve something for St. Patrick? I don't want to say no to that. I hope it got approved.
It did. The
Oh,
next
good.
day, yeah.
Oh, good.
Yes.
Okay, that's what we need to know. This is the history. I know you want to know the whole Northwest Territory stuff, but this is the history that we need to know. Is there anything else you really want to make sure that people know about the fort? Because why is it important that we know about? It's a small fort. How long was it there?
It was there for just a little over a year.
Okay.
The Chickasaws, the story goes that they secured the land from a tribe of Indians. Well, the Chickasaws thought that they owned that land, and so they were constantly harassing, and there was a siege, a 3-day siege at one point. And don't get me wrong, the British were behind it at the time.
They're behind everything.
Yeah, they were at that time. With the constant Indian attacks and the the men were being stretched thin. There was disease. There was apparently a malaria outbreak at one point or another.
That's never good.
And so I know, for instance, Captain Keller's company wasn't there for the longest time because they were chasing a band of Indians that had attacked St. Louis during that conflict all the way up to Rock Island, which is near Chicago. So all of Captain Keller's company wasn't even there at one point or another.
You know, that's something that we, in this day and age, cannot even understand what was really going on and how
Yeah.
transitory things might be.
Yeah, we see forts that are being currently maintained as sites because they're
Mhm.
still there. We like Fort Meigs, right? We like to visit Fort Meigs. And we don't get to visit Fort Jefferson yet until
No, there's a
it's found.
monument
Yeah.
close by in the
Okay.
nearby town of Wickliffe, Kentucky.
Okay.
Or, yeah, it is Wickliffe, Kentucky. I misspoke earlier. It is in Kentucky
Okay.
because the river kind of goes.
It's right. That kind of. Okay.
Yeah.
If you're watching, make sure you got that. It's in
Yeah, I'm
Kentucky.
sorry,
Okay.
I misspoke that.
That was a test
But,
for you, just so you know.
It's in the Jackson Purchase area.
But right, but Ken Karstens has already undertaken one dig there years ago. He did not find the actual blockhouse, but he did find what they thought was some evidence that there was an 18th century settlement or something there of that time period. And over the last couple of years, we've been in contact with him enough to know that he's trying to mount another dig because he's pretty sure where it is now,
Okay.
which would be really interesting to know and what they might possibly find. And, you know, it might be just some post holes in the ground, but at least we know
That would
exactly
be
where it's
something.
at.
Yeah, that would mark it.
Mhm.
And we're not going to tell the whole story of George Rogers Clark. You have to come find us at an event if you want to talk about more. But I mean, he is the name in the Northwest Territory,
True.
and all of his movements in the territory are why the British couldn't just keep it after the Revolutionary War.
Right, right. We controlled the territory. So the British didn't have claim. They actually didn't have claim to Detroit,
Don't tell them.
but they
Don't tell
didn't
them.
leave.
Yeah.
And that was one of the places that they mounted a lot of the offensive for the War of 1812. So not pushing them out of Detroit at that time probably was a mistake.
Which
It
was his
the
goal. That's what
original-
he wanted, enough presence in the country to be able to
Yeah,
affect
Yeah.
Detroit. But
right.
that part didn't happen. But the fact that we know he had such an impression on what was happening out here and controlling the territory,
Mhm.
that made all the difference in what happened in the treaty and what happened
Right.
with who got what land. So it's important. It's a small fort for a small town for a small amount of time
Mm-hmm.
with part of the big story.
Right.
So now we know a lot more than we knew when we started.
Thank you.
And thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for doing this. We actually want to talk a little bit more about how we now do this as a group in the modern time. We've talked about what was happening then, so let's talk about what we do now. So we're going to swap you out.
Let's put those under,
Okay.
unless you're going to use them.
I might. Sometimes you need to read. Sometimes even though we're live and people are joining our discussion and wondering what we're drinking, you're wondering, aren't you? If you just tuned in, we told you at the beginning, you should have tuned in earlier.
You can see it on a replay.
Maybe we'll tell you later.
I actually mentioned it.
See, it's been mentioned more than
It's
once.
in the chat.
You
Do we have any
she's
questions?
giving you.
Not
So
yet.
if you're watching this and you don't have the chat turned on, Mrs. McKenna she's giving you all this wonderful inside information that I don't even know what she's telling you. Actually, that's a little alarming. Come on over here.
I said I thought it was lemonade, and it's delicious.
It could be. Comment in the chat if you think I have lemonade. What do you think? Okay, so you are one of our officers, one of our leaders. We've talked about what the real Fort Jefferson was a very long time ago, 1780, 1781.
Yes.
And then I did mention there's this NWTA. Let's talk about what we are and what we do.
Yes, so we are a new unit with the NWTA. And as Kevin has said, we have the flexibility of portraying civilians, which means we get to do a variety of things, not just marching and gun toting and things, which are very fun for a lot of people. But if you want to do something else, if anybody at home is watching and wants to join us, hint, hint, you can research something, a career that was done at the original Fort Jefferson, and you can come to us with the research, and we are happy to have you and your research and as many types of impressions as we can get.
And I mentioned some of the things that some of the men in the unit are doing besides the militia, which is always an option because that's always an option at events. That's generally something available. But there's also someone learning coopering, and there's someone that knows leatherworking, and I listed all tailoring. I can carpentry, farmer, 18th century farming. But also, I didn't mention, because I knew that we were going to get to talk about it, all of the things the ladies are doing too, which we have the ability to do because there's Clarksville. We have that attached, that part of our unit.
Yes.
What are some of the things we were doing today? And we said there was no fire today because it was hot, but that's not true.
That was a lie.
Because
I didn't out in the Fireside stream.
we were not in front of a fire
No.
today.
I was all day long. Yeah.
Yes.
I was cooking. I made beef noodle stew with lots of veggies for our unit to feed us as a demonstration to the public, but also because we get hungry. It's hot out here and we want food.
And we had, and you saw images of some of the things that our group does in that quick opening video that Mrs. Weaver made so lovely at the very beginning. Thank you for doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the things that you saw in that video are box loom weaving, tablet weaving on an 18th century replica box loom, on tape loom. And you saw spinning, and you saw, you also saw a lot of interaction because the person we have that does spinning will sit down with kids and say, all right, now it's your turn to give a try. And actually one of those images was Libby, our spinner, teaching one of your children.
My child, Eleanor.
Yes, exactly.
Eleanor has their own spinning wheel now and is learning at home, and it's difficult, and I can't help with that because I cook.
There's a lot of, and of course cooking, we find 18th century recipes, we get to cook them, and then remember when I said living history is really tasty? It's not just the beverages, although we have those recipes too. And we are fond of them, maybe, possibly.
Yes.
Some of us.
Yes. Yes.
But then, I mean, we could be dessert type things that we're making. It could be meal type things.
Yes.
And my favorite is when public members say, "Oh, is that real food?"
Yes, we get that question a lot.
Yeah.
Is that real food? Is that real fire?
Yes.
Yes.
We
And
hope
are,
so. because
Are you
that
going
goes-
to? Are you going to eat it?
Oh yes, we do. We eat everything
You
that
betcha.
we make. Yes.
There are children in the unit.
Yes.
You mentioned.
I have 3 myself. My first event was done. I was 12 weeks pregnant. I slept on the ground, 12 weeks pregnant. It was more fun than it sounds, actually. It really is. And so my kids have been raised in the unit, and we consider our unit like a second family.
And you talked about you can't teach them to spin
No, I can't, but I don't have to because we
they're part
have
of the
people.
center.
Yes.
Yeah, it's. I think that a lot of us start doing this because we like history. Depending on how we first connected,
Mhm.
maybe we got connected with American Girl dolls. Maybe we got connected because we visited sites growing up.
Mhm.
I used to visit Old Sturbridge Village in Massachusetts and say, how do you get to meet those people?
Mhm.
And I don't know how many of us used to visit any site and say,
Oh, I did as a child.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
I didn't. I thought they were professionals or hired or something, and I was
Yeah.
in my mid-30s by the time I realized, oh, I can do that too.
yeah, I wanted to mention that because I think a lot of people they go to the site, they see us, they see you in your fantastic 1830s impressions here, and they see us doing really fun 18th century things, and well, okay, but how did they get to do that? Like, that's a thing other people get to do, and
Do you
that's,
burn your first loaf of bread?
I've burned more than one. I burned a queen's cake. And that was
that's
Saturday.
serious.
Maybe it was a fruit cake. I burned an 18th century cake, And I just think you don't have to leave it in the hearth that long. Now I know.
Yeah.
That's kind of the fun though. Is a lot of what we're doing is just trying it.
Yeah, that's the way you learn.
Doing
Just
it
shut up
wrong.
and do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've learned so much about history, not even just reading it or having other people tell me, but by doing it and then realizing, oh, now everything I've heard makes sense because I just burned a pie or whatever.
How many times are you reading something, just literature from the 19th or 18th century, and there's something that makes perfect sense to you because you've done that in the
Yes,
kitchen? Yeah.
absolutely.
And the same with wearing clothing.
Yeah, which
You
I do
know-
like doing, wearing clothing.
You know what the stays feel like, you know what
Yes.
they do, and what you can do and cannot do, like raise your arm.
Yes.
Yes, and you know what? I never miss a chance to do the stage talk because that's relevant because
Front
every
and center.
I know I'm literally center. See, they can't stop. Every movie ever that has stays in it, whether it's the 18th century, which doesn't even switch your ways, or whether it doesn't matter, whether it's an imaginary century, that's fine. They all show people who pass out from stays, which they don't do that, and they're not wearing them out. But that's why I mentioned at the beginning, you don't need to squish them to make your waist look smaller, because there's other things that, it's a trick, guys, don't tell anyone it's a trick. But that makes sense if you've really worn stays, because what can you do when you're wearing stays?
I can do almost anything I can do in my normal modern clothing. Yes, and my stays are made to fit me. My husband actually made these. These are called charity stays. Like I said, I'm the cook. I'm portraying a lower class woman. These are made of leather. Leather was very plentiful. Fabric was expensive. Leather was cheap because everybody ate meat. So my skirt is wool. Again, wool is very cheap. I'm dressed minimally so that I won't die of heat stroke over the fire.
And the wool apron is fire retardant.
Yes, wool is naturally fire retardant. That's a very good point. Thank you for mentioning that. Yeah.
Yeah, there's you can do all the things. I've also seen you hauling cast iron pots and
Yeah, I can bend over and poke at the fire and haul big pots. I can do everything I can do because I'm not suffocating.
Do you feel like the stays support you with the heavy things?
Absolutely, yes. I think when I am at an event, sometimes, I don't always cook at the event. Sometimes I'm sitting and I'm hand sewing. I'm also a seamstress. I love to hand sew. And when I'm at home watching TV, I hunch and I'm hand sewing, and then all of a sudden I realize that I can't move my back anymore. I can't do that in these days. They hold me in the correct posture, so I can hand sew all day at an event, and I won't even know it the next morning.
That's part of the living history.
Exactly.
Is the part that goes in there. Do you have to be a history major or know a lot about history or be some kind of old-fashioned person to do this group?
Absolutely not. No, I mean, it helps to love history, and everyone in our unit loves history, and that's why we do this. We're fascinated by history. History is not a boring subject. So many high schools get it wrong, and they make history a boring, dry thing. It is fascinating because people are fascinating.
And it's tasty, people.
It is tasty.
I think you said that.
I swear I ate dinner. I did. I swear I ate dinner.
No, it's not just dates and numbers.
Yeah.
No, absolutely not. No, it's lived experiences.
I think too, one reason we talked about the research and the specific things that happen in the people is that when we do living history as a unit, we look for specific people. And then we find their stories.
Mm-hmm.
When you're doing it abstract way as hit dates and locations, you don't have a person's story. And we get to be people's stories.
Yes.
Which makes it stick.
Yes, it makes it fun. It helps you learn, I think. I think my kids are learning more about history at these reenacting events than they do in school. And I take them out of school sometimes to go to events, and I will submit an absence waiver for them and tell them exactly what they're doing. And the teachers are always very supportive and happy.
And how do I get all the kids
Yeah,
to
right.
do this?
Can you take the rest of them?
Yeah. Please, for Dave. Do you think your kids learn other history differently, having participated in specific events?
I haven't thought about that, but that's an interesting question. I wonder if they do.
I mean, they're still young and growing up, so you get to watch.
Of course,
But
yes.
That's really fun. I want to talk about,
You want to talk about everything.
I mean, that's true. but everyone who knows me knows that already. And you knew that.
I knew that.
You knew that
I
about
knew
me.
the answer. I knew the answer.
All right. You guys, if you're watching, you know that too. But if you didn't know that, there's something specific you want us to talk about, mention it in the comments, because then they'll let us know and we will start
Okay,
talking about that.
we did miss a couple of earlier comments.
Oh, I'm so sorry we missed those. Let's go with this.
We had a slight glitch, but I got it back. My
Okay.
screen was gone. But we have Kimberly Tolbert from Great Inspirations. She wanted to know what are some of the features of 18th century farming? I mean, did women work out in the fields as well, or were they busy with inside
There's
tasks?
always the kitchen garden.
That's true. And
Yeah.
actually, I wish we had, so one of our members, it makes it an absolute specialist in gardening. Some of us have some very specific, and actually I see someone that has some information over here, so I'm gonna call him back over in a second. And also, I know that one of this, remember I talked about studying specific people, and I know one of the specific 18th century people that I've studied is Judith Kemper, and I know that she was definitely doing gardening because that was how she was able to, and her husband could go to seminary, and that's documented. So we do have it documented that, and then some parts of gardening was literally their job. Their kitchen garden is their garden. And what would be, let's see, Kevin, do you have info you want to add to this? I'm just talking to someone off camera and we're going to call them over.
Yeah.
It's all right, you'll catch up, we'll fill you in. I know you know stuff about this too.
This is basically about fashion and farming in relationship to women in the 18th century. There was a pastor, a reverend that was from the East Coast that wrote about his travels in the Kentucky settlements in the 18th century. Well, he remarked in his journals that the women were out working in the fields in only their staves,
Oh,
which on the East Coast that was scandalous.
We are only slightly scandalous, but okay. But
I'm a
see,
little scandalous.
this when you read that, what does that look like? This is only your stays right here. We're going to turn you around. Only your stays doesn't. It makes the assumption that there's a shift.
Yes.
And
And
by the
probably
way, when you
there's
see a movie and they leave the shift out, I just want you to think chafing. That's not a thing. The shift is your friend.
Yes.
I'm sorry you had to hear that from me.
it's basic. It's basic.
You need that. So yes, yeah, that is actually, I've seen other sources of soldiers talking about what people are wearing on the frontier, which is Ohio, southern Ohio, Kentucky, and it's that, yes, short gowns without stays was what somebody wrote down. Here's the thing, this is not a thing on the East Coast. That's why it was.
Of course.
That's why it was relevant. That's why he wrote it down. This is not a fashion diss. This was a soldier going, "Oh my word!" The context of why he was writing that back, and.
But were they shiftless?
No, they weren't shiftless. They were hard workers
Another-
and literally wearing shifts.
Yes.
But so in both senses of the word, and you know that was on purpose. And
Yes.
so it's those things happened. There were women, but it was because they wouldn't have gone back into Pennsylvania, into the East Coast,
No.
and tried to pull off that outfit.
Much more formal
Yeah,
society.
there are rules, and you kind of have to know them, or you don't get to do the things with the people.
Yes.
But if you want to eat, you're going to work because you're,
Yes.
you're at the mercy of the weather. You're at the mercy of all kinds of things that we don't understand.
Yes, absolutely.
So one of the other things that we do. Let me check. Are there more? If
Well,
that didn't
yes.
answer your question.
It's a little out of context, but
Okay.
Mr. Longsworth wants to know where he can buy one of those pitchers and bowls that are on the counter.
Ah. Well, these
Mr.
were made.
Longsworth, what a
These
good
were
try.
made. These were made by Don Carpentier, who unfortunately has passed on. And they're called mocha-ware, and there's lots of places that make mocha-ware. S&J is one contemporary group that does it, and they're lovely. Don't buy the old stuff, buy the reproduction.
Yeah, and then put really good beverages in it.
Yes. Do you have a good beverage?
I have a delicious beverage.
And do you have a good
I
beverage?
so do. In
I
my,
see.
in my mug.
So that brings me to one of the things, I think the thing that made most of us fall in love with the group was, now we love getting to interact with the public and getting to know the public and share information with the public. But then we also really love Saturday night at 5 p.m., you all go home, and the first thing we do is we eat the delicious food that Nikki was cooking all day long. And we do really eat it. It's not just a demo that we throw out. I do have had people think that we're throwing out all that food.
Crazy talk.
Or that it's not real food, of course. Or that they should just graze on it all day. Don't eat it. We need that for dinner. Unless we tell you to. That's different. But then, once we do that, we clear away the dishes that we may or may not do right away, but maybe leave till the morning. And
That's what the children can do.
Yes.
that's the idea.
The children haven't been drinking, so.
So it does help.
Thankfully.
I'm not saying what's in these mugs is necessarily a grown-up beverage.
You're spending far too much time on the mug contents.
Shouldn't we?
Yes.
This is why I told you to get something for your own mug at home, okay? I told you you could join us so you would not feel left out. But then what happens is we get to spend time together, and it's usually around the hearth, or if it's really hot, we'll go outside. And we will get to share songs. We'll share 18th century songs. And so I want to talk a little bit about, and I'm going to give you a second to move, because you were going to shift, and I'll just talk about this for a second.
She's multifaceted.
Exactly. So many things are happening at the same time. But one of the things about the 18th century is when you experience music, most of the time, most people are not experiencing it by a professional performer, and they're absolutely not experiencing it with a polished recorded version on whatever technology we use now. And what they're doing is they're using music as something to pass the time while they're working, as something to do together in a group. It's not a performance. It's not necessarily in our group, because our representation is a community, it's a town. We are not, it's not a tavern uproarious type of thing, although we could be uproarious, I'm just saying.
It's not the Eagle Tavern.
No, it's not, which is something you can see that represented on the same
Our
channel.
YouTube channel.
But when we experience music, it's to make cutting the vegetables a little bit more interesting. It's to make endless rows of stitches a little more interesting. It's to give rhythm to a job or a task that you have to do repeatedly over and over again. And so that's the kind of ways that we're going to share music. So actually, right now, we'll add that we're not a music group. We are not traveling, doing concerts and tours around the country. I guess if you want us to, you can say so in the comments. But speaking of traveling, our mics may be picking up some traveling that's happening outside of this building right now.
Motorcycles.
But it's not 18th century. Fortunately, we didn't get that part while we were singing. So what we're going to do now is we're going to get a chance to hear some of the way we enjoy music in an 18th century way, just enjoying it with each other.
Let's wait till he goes away.
Yeah, we'll wait for the last traveler. It's a nice day out. They had to get out.
Oh, yeah.
It was a good day. They should have come in and spent time here today, but
Oh, wow.
I guess. Do you think we're ready?
Lance Minnis called this homemade music.
Oh yeah, yeah. There's
And it's at home, and it's...
that. Yes, for what we're doing. I thought you meant the outside sounds.
Oh,
actually.
no.
That is not. I suppose that's homemade music. No, what we're doing is
To somebody's
really
ears.
properly titled as homemade music. It's. Did you hear there's a new song? Yes, I pick up the broadside. Let's see if we can learn it together.
It's
And-
to the tune of...
Yeah, exactly. So that's what we're going to get to experience now. So let's take a look at that.
Kind friends and companions, come join in my rhyme. Come lift up your voices in chorus with mine. Come lift up your voices, all grief to refrain. For we may or might never all meet here again. So here's a health to the company, and one to style and for beauty, there's none can excel. There's a smile on her countenance as she sits upon my knee. There is no man in this wide world as happy as me. So here's a health to their company, and one to my lass. Let us drink and be merry, all out of one glass. Let us drink and be merry, all grief to refrain. For we may or might never all meet here again. A ship lies at anchor, she's ready to dock. I wish a safe landing without any shock. And if I should meet you by land or by sea, I will always remember your kindness to me. So here's a health to the company, and one to my lass. Let us drink and be merry, all out of one glass. Let us drink and be merry, all grief to refrain. For we may or might never all meet here again.
All right, so that's one of them, and because we all drink out of one glass, I feel like mine needs some more now.
What do you mean we drink out of one glass?
I don't know, it's in the song. I'm using it as an excuse for more.
All right, thank you.
It's fine, right? It's fine. This
It
is really good, guys. This is really good.
Thank
But
you,
don't
God.
worry, that wasn't the only song. We have some more.
No.
We do.
Oh.
I just needed to come back here and get a refill for the songs. Because they go together. You need this to go with the music. Did you know that?
Yes, I've read that in books.
See, we're just reenacting.
We're
what we see,
educated.
What we see. That's definitely it. But we do have some more songs. So if you're watching the stream, stay on here and let's listen to some now.
I thought I heard the old man say, "Leave her, Johnny, leave her. It's a long, hard pull to the next payday, and it's time for us to leave her. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. Oh, leave her, Johnny, leave her. For the voyage is done and the winds don't blow, and it's time for us to leave her. Oh, the winds were foul and the work was hard. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. From the Liverpool dock to the London yard, and it's time for us to leave her. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. Oh, leave her, Johnny, leave her. For the voyage is done and the winds don't blow, and it's time for us to leave her. The skipper was bad, but the mate was worse. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. He'd blow you down with a spike and a curse, and it's time for us to leave her. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. Oh, leave her, Johnny, leave her. For the voyage is done and the winds don't blow, and it's time for us to leave her. It was rotten meat and moldy bread. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. You'd eat it or you'd starve to death, and it's time for us to leave her. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. Oh, leave her, Johnny, leave her. For the voyage is done and the winds don't blow, and it's time for us to leave her. Well, it's time for us to say goodbye. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. time for us to leave her. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. Oh, leave her, Johnny, leave her. For the voyage is done and the winds don't blow, and it's time for us to leave her.
I am blanking. I can't hear the first two notes.
Oh, that's okay.
Happens. It
Would
happens.
I were on yonder hill, 'tis there I'd sit and try my fill, till every tear would turn a mill. Escoge to my vorning slan. Shul, shul, shul aroon. Shul go sokaraga, shul go kyun. Shul go dorasaga seileran. Escoge to my vorning slan. I'll sell my rock, I'll sell my reel, I'll sell my only spinning wheel, to buy my love a sword of steel. Escoge to my vorning slan. Shul, shul, shul aroon. Shul go sokaraga, shul go kyun. Shul go dorasaga seileran. Escoge to my vorning slan. I'll dye my petticoats, I'll dye them red, and round the world I'll beg my bread, until my parents should wish me dead. Escoge to my vorning slan. Shul, shul, shul aroon. Shul go sokaraga, shul go kyun. Shul go dorasaga seileran. Escoge to my vorning slan. And now my love has gone to France, to try his fortune to advance. The heir comes back, 'tis but a chance. Escoge to my vorning slan. Shul, shul, shul aroon. Shul go sokaraga, shul go kyun. Shul go dorasaga seileran. Escoge to my vorning slan. Very nice. This is a song that we always end the evening with. It's a tradition that we've been doing for more years than I want to remember. Do you want to start?
What song? I can't read it.
So the kind of last one. It's the first one they taught me.
When I was apprenticed in London, I went to see my dear. The candles were all burning, the moon shone bright and clear. I tapped upon her window to ease her of her pain. She rose to let me in, and she barred the door again. I like your well behavior, and so I often say, I would not rest contented whilst you are far away. The roads they are so muddy,
So roll me in your arms, love, and blow the candles out. Your mother and your father in the next room do lie, a huggin' and a kissin', so why not you and I? A huggin' and a kissin', without no shame nor doubt. So roll me in your arms, love, and blow the candles out. If we should prove successful, love, pray name it after me, and dress it neat and kiss it sweet and dance it on your knee. When my 3 years are over, my time it will be out, and we'll seal our thrice indebted love by blowing the candles out.
So now you got to join us for a little bit of Fort Jefferson Saturday night. And since you heard our Blow the Candle Out song, we could blow let's blow the candle out on this live stream.
Toast.
With a toast. We hope to see you at any of the future events that Fort Jefferson will be at. You can find us on our very anachronistic Facebook page, Fort Jefferson and Clarksville. You can find us. If you have questions for us that we didn't get to in a chat for some reason, we'll blame computer glitches. Or if you just want to know, we'll blame everything on computer glitches.
Absolutely.
Might not even be related, but it's okay. And you got to be in a little tiny bit. Thank you so much.
And we will put contact information in our description.
Fantastic. Thank
you.
Thank you for hosting us.
Oh, our pleasure, madam.
It is absolutely a lovely sight, and you are a lovely host, so thank you for being here. And
It's our
thank all
pleasure.
of you for joining us for Fort Jefferson Saturday night.
A toast.
Yay.